The rain had been falling in relentless sheets for hours, blurring the road ahead into streaks of gray and black. Daniel's eyes ached from the drive, the windshield wipers barely keeping pace with the storm that seemed to follow him no matter how many miles he put behind him. His gas gauge was nearly on empty, and his body screamed for rest. When he finally saw the faint glow of a neon sign through the rain, it felt less like luck and more like a desperate necessity. The sign buzzed weakly, one side sputtering between light and darkness, and the word vacancy flickered like a dying heartbeat. He pulled his car into the cracked asphalt lot, potholes filled with murky rainwater, and sat for a moment listening to the storm hammering the roof of the car. The motel looked old, long forgotten, with peeling paint and sagging gutters that poured water in heavy streams. The windows were either shuttered or so dirty that no light could be seen inside. When he finally forced himself to step out of the car, the cold rain immediately soaked through his jacket, clinging to his skin. The front office was lit by a single bulb that buzzed and swayed above the door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of stale cigarettes and damp carpet, and behind the counter sat a man whose age was impossible to place. His skin was pale, almost waxy, his thinning hair plastered to his forehead, and his eyes seemed glassy, as though they didn't quite focus on Daniel, but rather somewhere past him. Without a word, the man reached under the counter and slid a tarnished brass key forward. The number etched into the tag caught Daniel's attention instantly. 9. There was no explanation, no polite greeting, only the sound of the key scraping across the wood and the storm groaning outside. The room greeted him with a damp chill that clung to his clothes and seeped into his bones. The carpet was worn thin in places, stained with shapes and colors that told stories he didn't want to imagine. A single lamp on the nightstand gave off a faint yellow glow, its light barely cutting through the gloom. Daniel set his duffel bag on the rickety chair and tried to shake off the unease creeping up his spine, telling himself it was just exhaustion from the drive. The silence pressed heavily around him, broken only by the faint hum of the light and the steady rhythm of the rain against the window. As he sat on the edge of the bed, he felt it, the inexplicable prickle on the back of his neck, the undeniable sensation of being observed. He froze, listening, his eyes scanning the room. Nothing moved. The shadows held still, yet the feeling only grew stronger, tightening his chest until his breath came uneven. That was when he noticed it, barely visible in the dull light. A tiny hole in the wall, just above the peeling wallpaper directly across from where he sat. It was no bigger than the head of a nail, but perfectly round, deliberate. He leaned closer, his pulse quickening. The hole faced the bed directly, its placement too precise to be an accident. Daniel pressed his eye near the opening, but the other side was nothing but darkness, a void that offered no answers. He stepped back quickly, his skin crawling. The idea that someone could be standing on the other side, silently watching, lodged itself into his mind with chilling certainty. He tried to dismiss it as an old repair or a structural quirk of the building, yet the thought refused to let go. Gnawing at him with quiet persistency, carried the unease with him down the narrow hallway, the faded carpet muffling his hurried steps. The storm outside rattled the windows, but it was nothing compared to the storm of dread in his chest. By the time he pushed open the door to the front office, his shirt clung damply to his back. Not from rain this time, but from sweat. The clerk was still there, seated in the same rigid posture as before, his glassy eyes lifting only slightly as Daniel entered. For a moment, the man's expression didn't change at all, as though he had been expecting Daniel's return. "Need another room," Daniel said quickly, his voice edged with frustration he couldn't hide. He set the brass key on the counter, the clink echoing too loudly in the still air. "There's something wrong with that one. The wallet's not right. Someone's been watching." The clerk's eyes shifted from the key to Daniel's face with agonizing slowness, his expression remaining unreadable. His lips parted slightly, dry and pale, and for a long moment Daniel thought the man might not answer at all. The silence stretched so long that the pounding of the rain outside felt deafening in contrast. Finally, the voice came, quiet and flat, as though rehearsed. "Only room 9 tonight?" Daniel blinked, not sure if he had heard correctly. "What? No, that's not going to work. Just give me any other room." His hand gestured impatiently toward the wall of numbered hooks behind the counter, but none of them held keys. Every space was empty except for the spot marked 9. The clerk didn't look. He just sat there, hands folded neatly in his lap, eyes fixed and unblinking, his voice repeating the same words again, each syllable as steady as the first. "Only room 9 tonight." The walk back down the hallway felt longer this time, every step dragging with reluctance. The carpet's damp smell filled his nostrils, and the sound of the storm outside seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the pounding of his own heartbeat. When he reached room 9, he hesitated with the key in hand, staring at the door as though opening it would invite something in he wasn't ready to face. But the storm howled outside the narrow window at the end of the hall, rain blowing sideways in sheets that made the thought of leaving impossible. With a slow twist of his wrist, the lock clicked open and the door groaned as it swung inward. The room felt different now. He couldn't explain why, but the air seemed heavier, thicker, as though it had been waiting for him to return. He shoved the chair against the door and tried to shake the crawling sensation under his skin. Switching on the television, he left it playing some static-filled channel just to break the silence. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the hole in the wall, his pulse quickening with every passing second. Hours slipped by. The television's drone became background noise, a dull hum that barely masked the other sounds. Faint creaks in the walls, a soft scrape like fingernails on wood. Every now and then he thought he heard breathing that wasn't his own, shallow and steady, just beyond the plaster. He leaned closer to listen, but whenever he did, the sound stopped. Pulling back, it would return again, faint and deliberate, as if timed with his movements. When exhaustion finally dragged him toward sleep, the flicker of the TV lulled him into half-consciousness. His eyes grew heavy, his body sinking into the mattress, yet the feeling of eyes on him only deepened. Somewhere in the blur between waking and dreaming, he startled awake to silence. The TV was off. The lamp beside the bed was dark. He hadn't touched either. The room was drowned in shadow, yet the pressure of a gaze fixed on him was undeniable. Every inch of his skin prickled, and he realized the sound of breathing was back, closer than before, steady and unhurried, as though whoever was listening no longer cared if he noticed his eyes strain to adjust to the darkness, shapes slowly taking form in the dim light that leaked through the gap in the curtains. The hole in the wall stood out immediately, that tiny void of blackness across from the bed, But something was wrong. It wasn't just a single pinhole anymore. As his vision sharpened, he saw more of them, small, perfect circles dotting the wallpaper around the original one. At first, he thought his exhausted mind was inventing patterns in the shadows. But no matter how many times he blinked, the holes remained. One, then another, then more, until he counted a dozen, then 2 dozen, all arranged with chilling precision. They weren't scattered randomly. They formed the outline of a face staring directly at him. His throat tightened as the reality sank in. The wall itself seemed alive, riddled with tiny watching eyes. Each hole a silent window. He could feel the weight of the stare pressing against him. See the suggestion of pupils glinting in the faintest light when he dared look too long? His breath caught in his chest, shallow and uneven, as though any sound might provoke what lurked behind the wall. The air grew colder. He pulled the blanket up to his chest, but it did nothing against the unnatural chill creeping into the room. The silence pressed heavier than before, broken only by that sound, the slow, deliberate rhythm of breathing. It was closer now, deeper, the cadence of someone standing just inches away on the other side of the wall, waiting. He tried to convince himself it was a trick, the wind or the settling of the building, but the sound didn't falter. It moved, shifted, almost as if pacing behind the wall, dragging invisible eyes with it. Then came the whisper, soft at first, so faint he thought it was his mind filling the silence, but it grew clearer, crawling through the stillness like something with weight and intent. The words slid across the room, cold and intimate, making his blood run like ice. I see you. The holes seemed darker now, as if something pressed right up against them, drinking in every movement, every breath, every flicker of terror across his face.
Please like and subscribe channel Fear Frequency for more horror stories. Thank you.